All right, all right. I would like to welcome all of you here tonight. I'm very happy to count so many faces here at Movify. It's a pleasure for us always to welcome people that are working in our field, people like you. It's a pleasure to welcome you,
No problem.
Katsu, today. You all know Katsu, head of UX at Belfius. It's been we know each other now since
4 years. I think,
4 years since you joined Belfius as head of UX. Katsu, I realized just by browsing your LinkedIn profile, actually, we have one point in common. We both started our career as a developer.
Yeah, exactly.
So it was a while back, and then you took some responsibilities within UX. You have quite a nice background in that field.
Actually, I was tired of making stuff that nobody used. That's the main reason why I changed.
Makes sense. You joined Boondoggle for 11 years or so, and then since now five years at Belfius. And today, Katsu is going to tell us about how Japan is customer centric. I'm excited to hear what you have to say about that. Thank you in advance for being here with us tonight.
No problem, no problem.
The floor is yours.
Thank you. Right. Before we actually start, who has already been to Japan? Raise hands. Why? Quite some people. Okay, then I know who to address if I need some confirmation. There will be 2 times I will ask for confirmation. Actually, when Isabel asked me for the topic of today, it was somewhere halfway August, I think. Where is she? Well, I honestly didn't have a clue what the topic would be for today. But I was actually in a train in Japan, a normal commuter's train, and I was looking at the information displays. So it looks a bit like this. It's in Japanese and Korean and stuff like that, but you get the point. You see the upcoming stations, the numbers, the time until the next station. So nothing really spectacular so far, I think. Although I have to admit, I took the metro to here, and it was a bit different in the Belgian metro. But nevertheless, I'm sure you can find this also in other cities, right? There's one piece of info that I think Japan is the only country that displays it in the trains, which is actually this thing here. So before you arrive at the station, you would see an animation of the train arriving. It would show you in which car you are in. So it's different for each car. And it will show you how it relates to all the exits, elevators and exits and God knows what else, right? So is this really crucial to do this? Probably not, because you can also find this on a platform. Is it super handy? Yes, it is, because you immediately get out of the train and you immediately know I have to walk all the way to the left or to the right, because exits also determine to which transfer you can take and so on and so on, right? And especially in the bigger stations, this is super handy, because there's a lot of people. If you want to take your transfer in a very smooth way, this really, really helps, right? And all of this is also available through APIs. So when you would search a route on Google Maps, it will actually show you on the station where you get up that ideally you better get up on car 2 in this case in order to get to your destination the fastest, right? I tried to trigger this actually for London and for New York and Paris and some other major cities. I haven't been able to do that, so I'm assuming that Japan is the only country actually gathered this kind of info and displays it to the customers. All right. But actually, this is just one of the examples, and that's why when I was sitting in the train, I thought maybe I should do about a presentation with all these small features and small things and company in Japan spend their time on to make the lives of their customers easier and better, right? So that's why we're here. Before we start, let me just simply introduce, well, you already did it for a bit. I work at Belfius, you already know that. I live in Leuven, well, actually in Wilselen, near Leuven. I'm married to my Belgian wife, and I have an 11-year-old double nationality daughter. But more importantly, I was born in Japan, and I moved to Belgium when I was 4 or 3, I'm not entirely sure, to a small village in West Vlaanderen called Ruyen. So if you don't know it, it's perfectly normal. I would be even surprised if you did know it. You do know it? No? You were nodding, huh? So yeah, I grew up here, graduated here, started working here. I'm actually more Belgian than I'm Japanese, right? But nevertheless, my parents and my family still live there, so I go there every year to visit them for like 3 weeks or 4 weeks. And since I always do that during my big holiday of the year, I always take a time also to travel around. So I've seen quite a bit of Japan in meanwhile, okay. But nevertheless, since I've never really worked there, never studied there, never lived there, I still consider myself being an outsider. It's really hard to get into the Japanese society if you haven't really lived there. So that's also what today is going to be about, my own experiences, my own opinions about stuff. So I could be saying stuff that's completely wrong, could be. If you hear something, please let me know. I have absolutely no issue with that. So yeah, it's an outsider's view disclaimer. So what are we going to talk about today? So first of all, I'll explain a bit what I exactly mean with customer centricity in Japan. So I showed you one example. I'll show you a bit more to give you really an idea. And then I'll go into a bit why companies spend so much effort into doing that. And as the last thing, I will use the Japanese railways as a case to show for a small journey like buying a ticket into getting on a train. It's something very simple. It's similar to Belgium. What the differences are. I just picked out a few. There are like many differences, but just highlight a few to show you what they do different for exactly the same thing compared to Belgium and probably every other country in the world. Okay, sounds good? Excellent. Right, customer centricity in Japan. Who knows Japanese also? You do? I'll let you do the honors. Sorry? Yeah, exactly. So here in English, in Dutch, we say customer is king. I don't know how it is in French, probably the same. Well, yeah, okay. So in Japan, they actually say the customer is a god, so it's a few steps higher. And even though it's a saying, I think it's a metaphor that shows how Japanese society and organizations think about their customer compared to other countries, right? Because I really think that I will try to show that that customer service in Japan is really a few levels higher compared to Belgium or any other country in the world. So people who have been to Japan, can you confirm that? You feel that way? Yes. Okay, cool. But for the others, it's probably difficult to comprehend what I'm talking about, so I'll show you some examples to showcase that. The first example is, the first time I actually use this as a clicker. So the first example here is from an airport. So what you're seeing here is the ground personnel at an airport. So after they loaded up their luggage in the flight or whatever they did, you will see them lining up formally, bowing, waving people goodbye to wish them a good flight, to show the respect and gratitude for using the airport or the plane. I don't know exactly. It's a small detail, but I think it shows you the importance that they give to the customer. Second example, also from airport, you will see the staff of the airport or the flight. I'm not entirely sure, but she tilts the luggage to make sure that it's easier for customers to pick it up, right? Again, small thing, but I don't think you will see this at the Zaventem. I doubt it. Next example is someone who bought a box of Japanese sweets in a normal shop. It's not like high-end, and you have to pay attention at the precision, the dedication she puts into it to make the perfect wrapping. It actually looks way more impressive if you see it live, actually. But this video has, I know, millions of views of other people who feel that they were really impressed by these kind of things. And you should pay attention at the last detail here. She will do something. right now. So she puts the second bag inside the paper bag. Anyone have an idea why that is? Sorry? No, not exactly. No, it's actually, they're already anticipating the needs of the user, right? So the person will use this bag to take the cookies at home. And when you want to give the present to the actual person, you want to have it in a perfect bag so you can use the second one, right? And it's not something you need to ask, they will just do it automatically for you, right? It's not in the supermarket, obviously, but when you go to like a bit more higher shop, they will do these kind of things. Okay. Next, very basic, but also like a detail, but it also shows the attention that they put into it. So this is in a restaurant, so they will put these kind of baskets where you can put your backpack or your purse in to make sure that your backpack doesn't touch the dirty, it's not really dirty, but dirty floor, right? Completely different sector here, moving sector. They will cover almost your entire apartment with these kind of sheets. And if you live in an apartment, they will also do that in the hallway, all the way down to the floor, to the street, to make sure that they don't make any damage to the house or whatever. And they will go apologize to your neighbors that they're making noise in your name, and so on and so on. So it goes really a few steps further than what they do here in Belgium. And the last example that I found only, I think like 2 days ago, this is a guy, I think he put it on YouTube or something. He ordered a pizza at Domino's in Japan, and the delivery guy was like 1 minute late. Yeah, so he got a formal apology from the deliverer, and to make it up, he got a free coupon of a Coke. So again, I don't think you would see this here or anywhere else, right? I could probably keep on going for like another 15 minutes. Maybe someone in the audience also has like an example that they've seen in Japan. No?
The trains down where the train will stop. It always stops exactly there, so people are queuing up.
Yeah.
And there's no rushing, pushing, and
yeah.
And the doors open, and first you get the people out, and then people come in.
Yeah, I'll get to that later on, but thank you. But I think the biggest difference is because I think if you look around here in Belgium, other countries, you will also find examples of brands who put this kind of effort into customer service. I'm pretty sure of that. But the main difference is the level of consistency this happens. It's not just a few companies who do this, but it's really most of them and only a few not doing it, right? I think that's the biggest difference in Japan compared to other countries. Yeah?
In the hotels,
yeah.
So they would say, yes, I can.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, good point. So let's have a look at why Japanese organizations make so much effort for their customers. I'm just going to explain the why. I'm not going to go into the how, because 30 minutes won't cut it then. And I actually had 3 things, but I left out one yesterday because I felt it wasn't like entirely right. So I will share you the 2. The first one is the idea of omotenashi. It's something cultural. It's something that's going on for like centuries. And it's a philosophy that dates back from the traditional Japanese tea ceremonies, right? So basically idea of the woman there sitting on the right, spending a lot of effort and a lot of time to make the perfect cup of tea for their guests. And yeah, the only reason she does that is just simply to serve the guests, right? And the word omotenashi, if you literally translate it, it means it has no backs or it has no sides, meaning it's completely transparent. So if you say that more in a symbolic way related to customer service, it means that you want to serve your customer in an excellent way without really expecting anything in return, right? So you're not saying, hey, I'm going to smile for the person or do something because maybe I will sell more or some other hidden agenda you have in your head. No, you simply do it because you believe it's the right thing to do and it's the right way to serve your customer, right? Translated to business, it actually means that that customer-centric approach, that omotenashi thing, it's it's actually a core guiding principle of many companies, right? It's just like with safety. I hope not many companies have a USP that safety is important. That if you do use my product, you won't die or anything like that. But nevertheless, safety is crucial for a lot of brands, obviously. And in Japan, customer service is exactly the same thing. No matter what you do, you need to have a high level of customer service. Because also the expectations of customers over there is much higher compared to here, right? And if anything changes in behavior or trends or whatever, they expect the brands to follow and to adapt and still keep up that demand of high service. And you can actually see that in the reviews that a lot of Japanese stores and restaurants get. Because I often had, when I went dinner or something in a city I didn't know, we just went somewhere and it was really good, it was cheap, it was really good. And then when I go to check the reviews of the restaurant, I see that it gets a 2.8 or something, or 2.5, really low scores. And then if you go look at the reviews, you will see these kind of things, right? The waiter didn't smile at me when I entered the store, or I had to wait 2 minutes before they took my order and stuff like that. So they will punish you much faster than they will do here, because they actually expect you to serve you in the right way. Okay, does it make sense? Actually, there's another reason as well, because why the scores are a bit lower, is because Japanese people tend to give less fives, because 5 is really super excellent. So you don't really give that, whereas I would give a 5 if it's really good. Here in Belgium, I would give a 5. Japan, they would rather give a 4. Yeah. But also that, like I said, the level of expectation does play a role as well. And then I think you also saw it in the examples, is the attention to detail. It translates into really, because at the end, all the examples I've shown you, the core service is the same as here. It's just in the details that make the difference, and they spend a lot of effort into making a lot of details very positively, in a positive way, and that actually makes the difference. Okay. The second idea that I think leads to all these services is the idea of meiwaku. It's a Japanese word, and it's again something very cultural. And it basically, well, it's not the real translation for it, but it basically means that you shouldn't cause any burden or annoyance to other people, and especially not in a public space. I remember my mom saying that all the time to me, hey, don't do this because it's meiwaku, don't do this, don't do that. It's really passed on from generation to generation. It's probably not, I would say, so it's not important that you get injured when you do something dangerous. It's more important that you don't cause trouble for the people who have to clean it up afterwards. Maybe that's a bit exaggerated, but it's more or less that idea. That's also the reason why in Japan, the mouth masks during COVID were never an issue. They have been doing that for years already. This is actually even an advertisement from 1918, when there was also a pandemic, if I'm not mistaken, the Spanish flu or something. Anyone know? Yeah, anyway. So that's so they have a tradition of when you're sick and you're coughing and anything, and you go to public, you just wear your mouth mask because you would otherwise cause burden to other people. Okay, so translate that into a business situation together with that first idea of wanting to serve the customer in an optimal way. Obviously, in not any case ever you want to cause meiwaku to your customer in any situation ever, right? So that actually leads to a lot of apologizing in Japanese businesses. As a customer, they will literally apologize for almost anything that they do. So if you would go to a supermarket and they would ask you for the laser card equivalent, and you say, no, I don't have that, they would obviously apologize for asking. If you would have to wait in line for something and it's your turn, they will apologize for letting you wait 2 minutes, and so on and so on. And it also leads to a lot of features that involve avoid burden for people. For instance, in a lot of stores, because I was in Japan while there was a hurricane, so it was raining a lot. And when you would buy something, they will obviously give your stuff in a paper bag or anything, and then they would put these kind of plastic foils over your paper bag to make sure that your paper bag doesn't get wet. Yeah, it's not their fault; it's raining, obviously, but nevertheless, you want to avoid that burden for you, so they do these kind of services. If you would go enter a building or store, they would immediately provide you with these kind of things. So it's really a plastic foil you have to put on top of your umbrella to make sure that your clothes don't get wet, but also to make sure that you don't wet the floor, because that again would cause burden to other people. Again, okay. So there are like plenty of examples in this category that leads organizations to find these kind of ideas to minimize the burden for people. Okay. All right. All clear so far? Yeah, nothing confusing. Okay. So let's move on to that Japanese railways case. So why did I pick this? Because I think theory, like I've been explaining for the last 5 minutes, is a bit boring. So we'll rather show you some more cases. And also because it's probably the service that I used the most while I was in Japan. So we did a lot of traveling, even when you would commute, move around inside the city. When I go visit my brother or my family, you would also always use public transport. If I'm not mistaken, Japan has, 30% of all commuting by public transport in the entire world happens in Japan. That's how much people use it over there. And just to give you an idea about the organization that we're talking about, so it's the JR East. So Japan is serviced by 5 major organizations, and they're responsible for that part. It's more or less 5 times the size of Belgium, right? And also I would think 5 or 6 times number of inhabitants, so 60,000 or something like that. To give you an idea in size of the organization, I'll let you have a look. I can drink. Really nothing spectacular so far, right? They have a larger area to cover. They have more people to cover, so yeah, you have a number higher of stations. You have more routes, more kilometers of track, more employees, and so on. And it's from this point that it gets embarrassing because the number of daily passengers here, you see it, 40 million that they serve, whereas in Belgium it's 600,000. So, and you would think that with a ratio of 1 employee for every 36 people, I think, something like that, is better than a ratio of 1 person for every 300 customers. But again, I will need confirmation, but in my personal opinion, it's completely not the case. The level of service that they deliver, it's like Champions League, whereas here it's probably Division 2 or 3. Or lower, yeah. We can confirm that as well. People have yeah, right. And you also see that in the punctuality rate. So trains, so 5% of trains being late in Japan, whereas it's 87, well, it's 13% in Belgium. Difference of 8%, which is not that bad. It's okay. There's just a small nuance here. The asterisk, it means late in Japan means 1 minute late. Late in Belgium means 6 minutes late, right? So I don't want to see the numbers really calculated on the Belgian side. Okay. And this is completely off topic, but they have like the coolest trains ever. I mean, every time I see these arriving, I'm really proud to be Japanese. Okay. This thing here, actually, from here to here, it's 50 meters. So it's really huge. It's like a space shuttle getting into the station. Is really impressive. But let's just look at a basic customer journey of someone getting on a train and see what kind of differences there are. And like I said, I just highlighted a few, but there are like really many. Okay. Tickets. they have one simple system. So I'm not going to get too much in detail about this, but it's like basically a Movify card that they've been using since 2001, like Oyster card in London. The only difference is that it's much powerful. So you can also use it to pay. You can actually use it for about anything in the area, in the neighborhood of a station. So it's really powerful, and people use it a lot. Basically, they have a payment system. They have like a Payconic kind of thing. So you would have to imagine that NMBS owns Payconic. It's something similar here. But that is not what I want to show, because this actually counts for like 90% of all tickets being used to travel. And the other 10% is still the classic vending machines. And you have to see what happens if someone pushes the personal aid button. I mean, how much better can personal service be than this? And this is not an exception. So if you go to the larger stations, where the vending machines are located next to the office where the personnel is sitting, you will see this kind of thing, right? And also the vending machines are built actually that you have this space where people can pop up. Sometimes it's a bit smaller, but the thing remains the same, right? Next, you're through the gates, you go onto the platform, and then I think you all saw these kind of images somewhere on TV or on YouTube. So in a country where public transport is very popular, you obviously get these kind of situations. I personally haven't been in that kind of situation yet, but I try to avoid rush hour. But when you have all these people like on the track, on the platform, sorry, and you would have to move, like Evelyn said, 20 meters to the left because the door of the train is there. It could get dangerous, obviously. So you need to have a system in order to manage that. So that's why they have these kind of things. How you say that, painted on the floor. This is a bit more older. This one is more recent. So you can clearly see the two rows that they have to form, and people actually do this. You have that area, like Evelyn said, where it's left open, where people can just exit the train. And normally you would have two here, but yeah, the pole is there. And it actually works, right? So if you get up on the platform, you see a lot of people, but in reality, you will see that all these people are lined up. And when a train arrives, it really goes smoothly and structured. Okay. It doesn't even in Japan, it doesn't just happen like that. So they do a lot of campaigning around it. So they show these kind of videos inside the trains, and they show it a lot of billboards in the station to constantly remind people that they have to pay attention to it. But they also know that behavior isn't is easier taught when you're younger. So that's why they also spend effort into making these kind of leaflets and books they can distribute to the schools. They can use it as learning material from a young age to know how to behave on the train and on the platforms. Okay, so they actually put a lot of effort into it to make sure that even getting on the platform, behaving on the train happens in an ordered way. Right, something completely different, but we still go back to the crowded platform. And if you've been there, you know it's really hectic. There's a lot of people, there's a lot of noise also, so it can be a very stressful situation. Also, the people using the public transport there, they're most working people in rush hour. So yeah, with the Japanese working mentality, they're probably stressed. So that's why some people of a smaller train corporation in the 70s started thinking about what can we do about this? How can we try to improve the stress level of passengers on the platform? And they actually thought about sound design, because you have to imagine you're in an underground park late at night, you're alone, there's nobody there, and it's completely silent. It's a bit creepy, no? At least for me, it's a bit creepy. No? You? But you're tall, you're really strong. Whereas if it would be like music playing in the background, it's still creepy, but it's less creepy, right? Because music can play a certain role on your mood. So that's why in Japan they thought about creating station jingles for every station. So they really put a composer onto it to create these kind of happy but not too happy. So, I would say that not annoying happy jingles that they would play when you would arrive at the station, and it would sound like this. I actually had this one as my ringtone before I had my iPhone. And the guy who composed these songs, he actually gives concerts even in Japan for the fanboys, and you also can find YouTube videos of people really. So they interview, hey, what's the song at that station, and they can really sing it along because it really gets in their head. So it really works. But there's also a second reason why they do this, because I kind of paid attention when in Belgium the train leaves the platform. There's only two sounds that you hear, right? You hear the how do you say, the conductor whistle, and if you're at the other side, you barely even hear that. And then you hear the beeping of the door, and then it closes and it goes away. So it's like maybe 3 seconds or something like that. So in Japan, they would play first this. Yeah, sorry. You have to get used to this thing. So people know when they hear the song that the train is about to leave. So it's already a sign to go to the doors if you want to get on a train. So it is about 10 seconds or something. And then they say additionally track 2, the door is about to close, and then sound, and then the door closes. So you have way less people rushing into the door if you do it like this, because you have a much more clearer indication of the system. It's like basically the Nielsen-Norman heuristic system status. This is actually an example of that. Okay. And another thing that happens on the platform is bird sounds. So you would hear these kind of things, and they do that to indicate the exits on the platform for the visually impaired. So they can visually, through audio hear, okay, I have to go that direction for the nearest exit. Apparently it's not entirely perfect yet, because the voice sounds aren't loud enough if the platforms are too crowded, but nevertheless they're looking into it to see how they can do it. All right. And they're using bird sounds because bird sounds apparently have a very calming effect. I have to shut this down because it's too loud. They have a very calming effect on people. So there's a TED talk of a guy saying that if you listen to bird sounds every day for like 5 minutes, they have like a very calming effect on your mood. That's why they're using bird sounds. Also in Japan, if you how do you say that, the crosswalk in Belgium, you hear, I think, what do you hear, like a ticking sound or something?
Sometimes.
Yeah.
Not always.
Yeah.
Also for the blind people.
Yeah. Yeah. So in Japan, they will also play bird sounds. Yeah. For the exact same reason. Then on the train, already showed you example of the platform map, and this is another thing that they do. They actually, to be honest, they did it first in Korea, but meanwhile Japan is a country that has been implementing it the most. It's station numbering, yeah, right? It's very, very simple, but for every train station, for every line, they give us a number, a code. And it's especially useful for, well, it's 100% for the foreigners, because Japanese people obviously don't need it. If they hear the name of the station, they understand. But for a lot of foreign people, yeah, Aoyama Ichome or something, it's just rambling. It's just a collection of sounds, so it's really hard to understand. Whereas if the announcer would say Aoyama Ichome Z2 or Omotesando Z2, yeah, it's much more easy to understand. Okay.
The next stop is
Yeah, here we go.
Z2. Please change here for the Ginza line and the Chiyoda line.
Right. And it's also useful on the platforms, because if you know you have to go to in this case U14 and you see this on a platform, you know that you have to get to the other side of the platform, right? Because you're going from 10 to 1, so logically 14 is not being serviced on this platform. Okay. And I have one more bonus slide, which actually has nothing to do with users. Well, indirectly, because there's something to do with safety. And it's the idea of Shisakanko. I don't know if anyone knows this. You do?
You repeat yourself?
Yeah, something like that. I'll show you, because otherwise I don't think many people actually believe me.
To ensure smooth, safe rail operations, they use a technique called Shisakanko, also known as pointing and calling. Attendants point at anything that could be a hazard, from making sure the track is clear of debris before trains arrive, to confirming timetables and making sure gauges and instruments are in order.
Right, so the first time I actually saw this live, because they've been doing this in the meanwhile, not only for trains, but for like everything where safety is related. So I was in a bus behind the bus driver, and the guy was constantly doing green light, no car in the mirror, no passengers at the door. And I was thinking, what the hell is this guy doing? And I looked it up, and the idea is actually pretty simple. So apparently they've done a lot of research on that in Japan. If you need to do something and you point to it, and you also call it, like in this case, I need to push the green button, the error rate reduces with 85%. Right, so in a safety situation, even if you can lower it from 1% to 0.15%, it's huge number, obviously. So that's why if you see people pointing and saying weird stuff, well, that's the reason. Okay. So that was about it. I hope it was a bit interesting. It was. I wasn't entirely finished yet, but I think there's 3 things you can learn from all of this, because none of these examples are really applicable to anything what you do, unless you work for the MBS. But even then, because yeah, you have a difference in culture, and the bowing obviously won't work here in Belgium. So a lot of stuff that will make sure that all these examples won't work in Belgium. But I think what it shows here is that having the right mindset, the customer-centered mindset, will trigger a lot of things, right? Because none of this wouldn't be possible if companies didn't believe that customer service is important. Another thing we already talked about, details, right? Many improving small details can lead to a huge improvement of your service. And if there's one thing that those examples show you, is that you need to think beyond, because whatever you're doing now, probably in Japan, they're doing it 2 steps further. So there's always a better way. That was it. Thank you.
Any questions? Yes. I'll let you circulate with the mic.
Yes. All right. I just would like to go back on your last example regarding the point and call.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't really get why they were doing this? Is it for them? Is it for the crowd? Is it for another employee who has to push the green button? I didn't really get.
It's mainly to make sure that it's always related to safety.
Mhm.
And to make sure that they don't forget certain tasks in order to keep that safety. So they're pointing in the video, for instance, the guy has to check whether no one is still entering the door, the trains. So he does like this. He probably says no people, no people, no people, no people, no people, no people, and that's why he does that, to make sure that he actually checking all the stuff that he's supposed to check.
Okay, so for their own checklist.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect.
In the airports, they also do
No.
the pilots
Wait,
do
wait,
it, the
When my brother's a pilot, and the checklist of a pilot is like that. They point to the switch, they do it, they call it, and they do it also with the two of them.
Yeah.
So it's a thing indeed. If you call it and you point to it, and then you remember it better, and you are sure you have done it. Otherwise, you think you maybe have done it. So it's just a way in having your brain connected with your body. I think, it works.
But it looks silly. If you see him doing, it looks really ridiculous. But yeah, it works.
There's someone there.
Thank you very much for the presentation. I have a question based on that level of details that companies have there. When they create companies, so based on your experience or experience of people here, do the Japanese people, they are used to bootstrapping, so having shitty apps or shitty whatever, and making it better until it's perfect or going beyond, or no, they do things and they get into production. One is at that level of perfection, and then they go beyond. What is the style there, or something in between? I don't know.
So that was the slide I actually left out, because because I don't know, because you know, they have a lot of production improvement methodologies in Japan, like TPS, and that led to Agile and Scrum and so on. So they talk about that. So you find a lot of things on YouTube on that, and articles. But at the same time, Japanese companies are very structured. It's like very going from top to bottom. So I wasn't really sure how those two actually work together. I did find, for instance, for the Japanese railways, because they spend a lot of effort into, how do you say that in English? Betrekken. Sorry? Betrekken in English? No. Involve. Thank you, Louis. Involve the first line people. So all the station personnel, they would do a lot of effort to, like, creating monthly meetings and stuff like, and all kind of systems to gather their feedback in order to do something with that. So that's something I did find, but otherwise it's really hard to find how companies work, to be honest. Okay. I did a lot of research, but except for those very pretty basic stuff, it was very hard to find anything. So that's why I left it out.
Thank you. Yes, there's someone had a question, no?
Thank you so much for sharing your passions and interest in Japan and your adventure. Could you say a little bit about the food, and if there's some customer-centric aspects to food? Because you talked about the tea and the tempo and preparing tea and specialists. Does it also go to the aspect of restaurants and food? Again, thank you.
Yeah, it's the same thing. I can't really think of an example right away. I would probably have to say the speed in which they serve you. So the moment you sit down, I really haven't had a single situation where it took me more than 2 minutes before someone is really there to ask your order. They will give you free drink, free water, free tea, free refill. They will give you this kind of how do you say that?
Mouchoir, wet wipes?
Yeah, wet. Yeah, but it's a bit. It's if you go to a bit more decent restaurant, it's really like a hot towel to clean your hands. The basket example I showed you. Yeah. So yeah, a lot of details that I put in there as well.
Yeah, thanks for the presentation. I was wondering if you used some websites in Japan and if you see that centricity for customers, that service on the digital part. Because I've been myself, and it's difficult to me to understand a Japanese website, but I found most websites a bit clunky and not really that good. So I feel like on that side, they are a bit behind, but maybe it's a feeling from a foreigner. I don't know if you used some.
No, that's true. I think also I try to use Japanese apps as well, obviously, using my mom's account. And yeah, that's right. I think they're actually behind with that. I've also don't have no idea why that is, to be honest, because otherwise they're really technically advanced. But in terms of interfaces, yeah, a lot of the stuff it looks like it's been made 10 years ago. But I think recently there's been a change. I see more and more apps that are more at the same level of Western apps. So yeah, I think they're a bit behind there. But it's not also, again, it's I also did some research on that, because at the beginning I wasn't really sure what to put in the slides. So I looked at that as well. And there's also apparently a linguistic reason why it is, because the Chinese characters that I use, they have much more meaning compared to just letters here in Europe. So even if you see one character, and for foreigners it looks complicated, but for Asian people, with that one character, it actually functions more like an icon. So you really know with seeing that character what it means. So that's why for foreigners it might look a bit more complicated, whereas for Japanese people it actually looks more or less okay. But nevertheless, I agree with you that they're behind.
It's actually not a question, but a fact that I noticed in Japan. Like you said, in some area they are a bit behind. Like, I agree that they are ahead in many fields, but like, for example, for packaging, there is a real plastic waste in Japan, and I feel like they don't realize that. Or for example, administration, they're still using a lot of things on paper instead of online. And yeah, I mean, Japan is not perfect. And
no, of course. I actually also had some slides in the beginning, but I left it out because it was too long. But you're completely right. I also the plastic thing bothers me a lot, because you're right that they use it's for the excuse of serving the customer that they put everything in plastic wrappings. So if you buy a box of cookies, each cookie would be packed individually and stuff like that, and they will pack you and put it in a plastic bag, another one, and so on. So they have huge steps also to make their. So I completely agree. Yeah. And also the processes. I mean, the length I had to go through to get my passport renewed at the Japanese embassy. I mean, it took like months, because you have to get a paper copy, mind you, a paper copy from the family register in Japan. So my mom would have to send that, and then they would use it here to renew my passport. So it's like madness. Yeah.
Thank you for the presentation. I had a question that was kind of from the same area as you. I wanted to ask you if you think that the user centricity is actually the key to a functional society. Because for me, so far there are some examples that you've shown, like the guy going out of the small window. This is amazing for me. But the plastic little wraps for the umbrellas, for me this brings no sustainability, and also it guides the customer to do some certain thing, but for me it's not a red flag, but it's something not good that it doesn't come from their side. If it's so much in the culture to respect the space, it should come from them, not from the store itself. So for me there is where is the UX good, where is bad, like where it leads to a good practice in socially wise.
Yeah, honestly, I don't have an answer to that because, but I completely agree with you. Just like I told, I don't get your name, but because it's not only plastic, it's not only the environment, but also all of those services. Somebody has to do it. So people actually have to do it, and it will cost companies. So yeah, that's why people have to work very, very hard in Japanese companies. So yeah, that's absolutely a bad side of it as well. And the fact that it's still around, the plastic is still around, is a signal that they haven't really figured it out yet. I can't really answer your question, but I agree with you. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think it's not necessarily about the plastic, but also mindset as each individual gets.
Yeah.
As she said.
Yeah. Yeah, I think they actually have a difficulty with accepting the fact that if you, for instance, have less plastic, you have less customer service. And I have the feeling that for now, they're not able to accept that yet. Because I had only a few restaurants or places I've been that actually got a paper cup for my drink, and otherwise it's always plastic. Always plastic. So yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
No more questions? All right. Thank you very much, Katsu, for your time, for your insights. Very helpful. I guess we can all go home with some ideas of how can we be more customer centric at home, at work, everywhere. For future questions, I suggest we just continue around the drink.
Yep.
A big applause to Katsu. Please.